Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's conversation with Bob Holzman, who is the Systems and Digital Technology Librarian at Tulsa Community College. Why don't we start at first by Bob telling us a little about himself, his college, and the library. Bob?
Hi. I just wanted to say what a privilege it is to be asked to be a presenter to all these libraries and library professionals today. It truly is an honor. Tulsa Community College was founded in 1970. We have 4 full campuses around Tulsa County, which is about 500 square miles, and we have several smaller community-type campuses with just under 10,000 FTE students enrolled this semester. And the college annually has one of the largest freshman classes in the state, which includes comparisons to Oklahoma State University and the University of Oklahoma. And we do have a very nice website at www.tulsacc.edu. The library itself, our dean is Paula Satoon. Each of our 4 main campuses has a full-service library. We have a wide range of materials to match our TCC programs, print and virtual. We have a wide range of services, both in-person and virtual, including virtual reference and chat and things like that. We are using WorldCat Discovery, and we are using WMS as our system at this point in time. And our library's website is listed there as well, and that's hosted by SpringShare. And I also wanted to say, in addition to the dean, we have 4 full-time directors, 9 full-time professional librarians, and 4 part-time professional librarians around the campuses. I'm not going to say too much about myself. I am from Ohio. That's where I was born and raised. Lived in Virginia for 18 years and been out here in Oklahoma for about 18 years. I do have a music degree from the Cincinnati Conservatory at the University of Cincinnati, and I do have an MBA. I've had work in IT, programming systems, operations, in local government, local business, corporations, and libraries. 23 years of that experience has been in the public and academic library systems, and 13 years of my background has been in various positions of management, including some in libraries. And I've been at Tulsa Community College now for 9 years, and this past 9 years have been a rapidly changing world of high tech, and also the way libraries are organized to provide their services, which is, of course, happening radically right now.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Bob. I appreciate the background for everybody on the call. Can you tell us a little bit more about the challenges that your library faced and what drove you to start looking for a new system?
Sure, that'd be great. We were a Voyager integrated library system provided by Ex Libris. Voyager is a previous generation system, and we're all aware that Ex Libris has new products on the market, and Voyager is in the process, as most would expect, of being phased out. The improvements were slowing or stopping. Support was still there, but we saw the writing on the wall. And also we recognized that the previous generation system and technology was becoming expensive, not very cost effective for what functionality it was providing, and it was also a PC client-based software requiring a lot of attention. In the looking for a new LMS, and that was the term I was familiar with, instead of ILS, a library management system, we wanted something that was stable, innovative, full functional, definitely next generation, cloud and web-based, and an organization that developed and supported that with a strong history of solutions and service, and an affordable solution with a strong and growing library user base. We began looking in 2013. The library formed an ILS Task Force, which researched the market. We actually invited a number of vendors, including OCLC, to come on campus and present to the librarians and the staff, answer questions, and we were able to get some ballpark type of costs so that we would understand where we were heading in terms of the library budget. It was a long process of evaluation and elimination to some extent, and we also discovered along the way what occurred in the 2013-2014 timeframe was that the Oklahoma Department of Libraries was providing WorldCat Discovery to all libraries in Oklahoma, and so we moved ahead and implemented it even while we were on Voyager.
Great, thanks for that, Bob. So as you went through it, how does WMS help your library solve the challenges that you mentioned?
Well, that's a great question, too. We did want the new current generation cloud-based system. We didn't want to roll back into a previous generation system for the money. Wanted something that was going forward, looking forward, and would be here in future years. We did want a system that was fully integrated with a discovery front end, understanding that what we called an OPAC was going away with the next generation systems. Most of the companies had pretty much gone in this direction, and that it would be a seamless interface. We recognized with the solution with OCLC, of course, it is the best and largest bibliographic utility and database in the world, so that track record had already been established as a stable and company with good support. And we also recognized that WMS had been implemented in hundreds of libraries. And so that was definitely eye-opening to us. We experienced over our years of support with OCLC with cataloging and other services, Easy Proxy, and we had ILLiad in place at the time too. The experienced, friendly, timely support that we enjoyed. With WMS coming under consideration, we recognized the bundled aspects of the system, or that it included several other services with OCLC as well that we were paying separately for that would be part of the overall subscription to WMS. WMS was not overly burdensome. It was not overly complicated for what we could tell for our needs. I'm not going to mention any names of other vendors, but some of the vendor products were being developed that had a lot of feature-rich complications to them, and even to some extent made it a little harder to use, so we were looking something that would be a simpler, smoother fit. And of course, one of the solutions was we no longer need to maintain a server locally, no longer needed to maintain a database locally, no longer needed to maintain either server software or application software or client software. So it was like when we looked at these aspects, it was no to this, no to this, no to the other thing in terms of maintenance and support on our end.
Great. So as far as, you know, your library and saving time since you moved to WMS, what practices, procedures were you able to eliminate in order to spend more time helping students or doing other things?
Well, we found in tech services we were eliminating or reducing tasks and reducing a lot of printing. We were printing bibliographic records, item records for review into keeper record. We were producing lists for inventory, and as a result of inventory process, we were producing lists for deletions, both from the ILS and from the OCLC master record. We took our holdings off. We were also producing a lot of paper with missing and lost cleanup. The staff are more independent with the technology. One person isn't responsible for doing scripting and producing reports, so the staff are doing their own reports. They're doing many of their own circulation tasks, and handling their reserves maintenance is pretty much on their own now without having to involve technical services. Discards, I mentioned inventory before, interlibrary loan procedures. With ILLiad, we were able to set up on the WMS. It's sort of a manual process right now, but it worked better than with the ILS, so we were able to help with the interlibrary loan management. And of course, the comprehensive searching and filtering through the use of a discovery system, where we were incorporating many of our databases as well as what you might call a catalog into our holdings into one search interface, and then in that search interface, as is true with discovery systems like the the WorldCat discovery, the filtering that was available right there, and filtering even to the point where you could pick which vendor you wanted to focus in on in the filter, or, you know, what types of materials, what format, peer-to-peer, peer-reviewed, full text print, etc. So it's just kind of a nice combination of putting that together. The practices and procedures we were eliminating, we eliminated tasks for handling all the discards and deletions and tech services entirely. That's done on the front end at the circ desk when they remove the holdings. For example, if it's the last holding or last item on a title, it automatically will come off of the WorldCat master record, and we don't have to come back to technical services to deal with an ILS and OCLC at the same time. We eliminated the printing of a lot of the cataloging work and other paperwork, as I mentioned. We eliminated having to provide systems help with producing lists and reports. We are no longer having to load MARC records into an ILS because everything is right there in WorldCat. When you put your holding on it, it's in your system, marked for you. We were able to eliminate our authority update service with a third-party vendor because all the authority updating is done at OCLC on the master database, so there was no need for that. We eliminated maintaining and updating the servers and the software in the Oracle database, and we eliminated a lot of manual tasks in circulation and with the interlibrary loan processes as a result of the system and having it all on screen and on a web-based screen to boot.
Let's take a quick minute to see if there's any questions in the chat box.
Yes, Bob, we did have one question come in on chat. I want to remind everyone that when you submit your questions, make sure you select all panelists in the drop-down menu. And a little further on in Bob's talk, he will pause again to answer more questions. So go ahead and submit those as you think of them. This question says, what kind of maintenance fees are you paying?
Well, I'm not sure if I should talk about any costs specifically, but what we are paying now is a subscription to WorldShare Management Services. We had a couple of add-on modules that were for additional cost that were not part of the bundle, which I mentioned later on, the License Manager and the Analyzer for custom report creation, which staff are doing on their own. So the other outside maintenance fees we have to pay, which aren't bundled, would include the fact that we are an Easy Proxy user, and to maintain our Easy Proxy and keep current with that, there is a license for that, and also with ILIAD because we are still an ILIAD interlibrary loan user. And I believe that's about it. Everything else is now part of the bundled cost, and if the OCLC people recognize I missed something there, please jump in because I don't want to misrepresent that.
Okay, there was another question that just came in. I'm not, if you can answer this, I'm not sure. It says, do you have to obtain OCLC permission to export records to a third party, such as a discovery system or to a state consortium? And Bob, if you can't answer it, maybe Don can.
I don't know the answer to that since we don't do that.
And I'm guessing that, I see that it's from Victor Liu, and he might be discussing Melcat perhaps, or another third party like that. And you can export the records, but I have to verify on the permission. So we can take that offline. I can get back to you on that one. And then, Bob, the next question is it possible to add local nuts such as provenance binding information to the MARC record? And I think that's done in the local bib data and local holdings record, but I don't know if you want to talk to that one a little bit more.
Well, I know we don't do that, but correct in that all the local information that is not, you know, general or the master record information, there is local bib data that one can use, and they're in setup, and there is local holdings data. which both of those are specific to your library, but in terms of how you would do that or what fields it would require, I don't know the answer to that, so I'd refer that back to the OCLC folks.
Okay, and to answer the question from the audience there, you can migrate them in as well as part of the migration process. So if you have them in there, you let us know which fields they're in, and then we protect them that way. But you can also, that's one of the nice systems about Record Manager inside the WorldShare platform, is that you can enter your local information, and it doesn't get overwritten. It stays local to just your symbol. So,
and I didn't mention this in this talk, but yes, you have quite a bit of flexibility in what you request or in the questionnaire establish for your deliverables as to what you can have migrated and in which way, or in what you don't want migrated, both in terms of local bibliographic data that might be on your ILS as well as the holdings and item information.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any more questions, Katie, so I'm going to just move on, and then we'll talk to the rest of the questions at the end.
Great, thanks.
Okay, Bob, and I know we just were asked this question, so can you talk to cost savings of going to the cloud, hardware versus software?
Well, we had a very specific type of budget situation, and we had to find a solution that wouldn't cost any more or maybe cost less. We were looking at some of the other vendor products, and I'm not going to mention any names because that is not proper, but those costs were in some cases 50% higher than what we were currently paying for an ILS, and similarly to what we found we would be spending on WMS as a solution. So we found that the WMS solution was a really good fit with our budget situation, and part of that came from the bundled functionality as well as certain other services we could eliminate, such as syndetics and such as the authority control updating that we were doing. The bottom line was, compared to the ILS we were on, and you know that was Voyager because it was mentioned before, the cost of WMS with everything put together and taking into consideration all the savings was under the cost of the Voyager license and maintenance. But what we did do is we did add some additional modules that were at extra cost that we feel are necessary, and that still left us at about a break-even point. So we felt we were getting a lot more with a lot less effort on our part for about the same money and not asking for more. And that was a big plus when we went to the powers to be to say, will you approve this? We saved IT costs by eliminating the need for a server. It wasn't a virtual environment, but nonetheless, it takes up resources from the IT division in their virtual server environment, and to eliminate that system and all the costs it entailed, we eliminated the license for an Oracle database. We did reduce the annual ILS license cost because WMS just in and of itself was lower, and we did cut the third-party cost and the additional modules.
So I think I didn't advance that one quickly enough. I apologize.
That's okay.
So we're on to the next one. Okay. Sorry, that's user error on my part. I apologize. Can you tell us a little bit about the implementation process, migration? How long did it take? And as far as the experience and what it was like for everyone involved, because a lot of times this is very scary for change is scary.
It is, and it's going to be scary no matter what system you've gone on. I think this is my fourth migration over the years, but it happens and it works out. We had a situation I mentioned before where we were able to implement Discovery thanks to the state of Oklahoma providing that for all the libraries ahead of time. So we implemented Discovery in 2014, not knowing what we were going to do about the ILS or any replacement. The Discovery system and the knowledge base, the collection manager, go and work together, and we could implement those outside of an WMS license for the whole thing. and that was able to integrate back and also search our Voyager system through the Z39.50 interface. We did purchase some add-ons, such as remote databases, which are part of the bundle of WMS, so that was part of the cost savings, some of these individual add-ons when it was only Discovery. We did a reclamation project at that time to make sure that the Voyager database and the master records in our holdings in OCLC matched, so that if someone was searching Discovery, Voyager was correct and it would show everything we had. So that was important, and we had that done ahead of time and all the corrections made. Discovery, it is complex and it is involved, and it does take time to set up and test, and we actually did it in one phase where we set it up, and then another step where we refined it and revisited it and made it even better through improving our configuration. And of course, there's training for the staff and the users, but being web-based and being the fact that many of today's users are used to these sorts of things and facets on websites they use frequently, that wasn't such a bad idea. It was more of a paradigm shift, quite frankly, for the staff who were not familiar with it. And it took about 3 to 6 months to really get that all set up and clean and functioning really well with good results. The implementation process, there's nothing more important than preparing, and your data is the most important system asset, quite frankly, and I'm sure all of you know that. We did have the reclamation project, and that cleanup finished. We were working on a lot of data cleanup and standardization already through the Voyager system, and so this was great to be working on ahead of time, and I recommend if you have a chance to, I wouldn't wait until you sign the contract. I'd start looking at your current ILS right now and seeing what needs to be done to standardize and clean up anything that needs to be attended to. We were also going through a weeding and discards project, a major extent, so that was finished. We also looked at our patron and circulation data when we were moving more through the migration stages, and we had selected the system, and that's an important aspect of it too, because garbage in, garbage out's the old adage. We reduced our cleanup effort during that period ahead of time, and there was always some left over after migration. The bottom line on that is if you don't do it ahead of time, you're going to end up cleaning it up on the backside, kind of like reactionary. So it's always best to be a little proactive, I think. We selected and signed our contract in spring of 2015. We established a new task force for WMS, established a project charter. We had the timelines. We took the time to carefully plan. They have great questionnaires and documents that you have to really thoughtfully go through and work on, which provides how you want WMS to look and feel and how you want the data to be in there when you're on the other side. And that's a critical aspect of the planning and getting started. They have a weekly cohort schedule where you and several other libraries are going through the process steps together, and you work with each other as well as with OCLC, so you have people who are going through it with you. Next came the data offload and the migration, the review, the cleanup afterwards. You decide what you want to migrate, what you want to leave behind, what you might want to re-enter. You look at changes in workflows based on what you're seeing, and going through the configuration of the system gets you thinking about that and how it's going to function differently. The cohort started in July, late July, really got going in August, and we went live in December, so the WMS piece of it took us about 3 to 4 months, and we did break it into phases. Our phase after December 15th was those parts that were new to us that weren't part of the migration and the implementation of WMS, such as the add-on modules and other features and functionality that we didn't have or were not using with the Voyager ILS. And we also did something which was different. We migrated our circulation and our statistics data into WMS. Many libraries choose not to do that. We chose to go the difficult route and do that, and we are very glad we did, quite frankly.
Okay, Bob, I have to ask, if nobody else will, I'll say, why are you grateful you migrated that data?
The libraries that don't migrate that data basically start over. They don't have the circulation history about what has been checked out or what was checked out, you don't have the statistics as to the use of your materials. That's left behind. You might be able to capture it on a file or on a report from the old system before you say goodbye. Our phrase for Voyager was bon voyage, Voyager. But this way, we brought it forward into the system, so we have that history of use that comes right out in our reports when we're doing inventory or considering what items to be weeded or kept. It also kept our circulation services consistent with our patrons who were using materials for the current semester, as well as maybe some that hadn't quite returned them. And when we went through the process, we actually went through steps of rerunning notices real quickly. There was a process that we could work out with the implementation manager, so we reran our first, second, third notices and everything up to that point. And what happened was people were getting duplicate notifications of overdues, and we were actually getting materials brought back into us. And that was kind of a surprise. So it was a real nice cleanup.
Okay, so we have a couple questions tied to that as far as data and migrating it. So one of them has to deal with loss of any data while migrating to WMS, such as local notes. And then the other one is what circ info was migrated, only number of circs or last circ date. So I don't know if you want to take those two kind of together or what.
We brought our local notes over. Of course, we were on Voyager, and we had to identify where those notes were. And in some cases, we really had to do a lot of cleanup in notes because it's free text. But we brought the local notes over, which was a big help. We did bring our last date used. I believe that's one of the statistics. And what was the other part about the circulation data?
A number of circs or last circ date, and then did you lose any local note information migrating to WMS?
We chose to lose some local information that was really haphazardly tried in different ways and really didn't make sense. We chose not to migrate reserves. We chose to re-enter that, and that was kind of a way of weeding that and cleaning it up. We also chose to not migrate certain statuses. I'm not so sure statuses could, but we had a number of materials that were like missing, that we weren't quite sure where they were, and we were able to re-enter the missing status on those items. So all I want to say is what we did not bring is pretty much what we chose to not bring. There were a few things we couldn't, and that was exactly about a year ago, and it's hard to remember those details, but it was mainly choices.
Okay. And then the last question, then we'll move on to the next slide, is how many bib records does TCC have?
We have a small bibliographic database, especially since we were going through a weeding and revitalization of our collection, and I believe we migrated about 65,000 bibliographic records.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob. What feedback have you received from staff as well as students and faculty after the implementation?
Generally speaking, the system makes a lot more sense. It's more sensible, it's logical, and it's efficient. The circulation staff love it. And the cataloging staff, it makes things faster. You don't have your own database. That is true. It is the WorldCat Master Record. You do have local bibliographic information, and there are many fields that are allowed in that, and that is just yours. And, of course, your local holdings information, and there's quite a bit you can do with those kinds of fields. The circulation staff really like the browser interface and generally like the easier workflow. Users like the simple and clean discovery look and method, ability to use it with all of its power and capabilities. We actually were sitting at another university not too long ago looking at something entirely different, but I had a technical person sitting next to me, and while the librarians were talking about archives for a minute, he mentioned to me that he was very glad for us. He was saying we were very smart in going to the WorldCat Discovery because the one they had chosen was so complicated. There were so many difficulties, and it was a big challenge on getting it set up and working right. And he said you were fortunate to have picked something that was simpler and more straightforward in terms of its setup and use, like the WorldCat Discovery. And I thought that was an interesting comment coming from a big powerhouse place like they are. And the other comment was this was the smoothest implementation ever. Interesting, that's what our dean said. And she's been through a few of them too.
Well, it's always good when you're pleasing the dean.
Yes.
So I know we're going over our time here, but that's fine. I think there's lots of good stuff here, so please be patient, everyone. Many WMS libraries find that since they are doing things differently, they now have time to do different things. Is there anything new or different that your library's been able to do since going to WMS?
We've made more use of the knowledge base, the custom databases, which are databases you create for searching, mainly electronic books and special groups of journals and things like that we're able to create and put in as a custom database in the knowledge base or in the collection manager part of the WMS. We're working on other projects like our TCC archive. We have actually, through attrition, reduced staff and technical services and reallocated staff over the campus libraries for public services. We're doing more work and paying more attention to e-resources. My job has been changing greatly and transitioning. The workflows and tasks have definitely changed, and we are continuing to revisit our policies and procedures. We have to call policies guidelines, but all that's going on. Something new or different with using WMS, the cataloging librarian job changed significantly, and that person is now able to also assist at the public reference desk and is also able to work more on complicated or special situation cataloging, and that appears to be faster as well. Reduction effort in processing items, the efficiencies provided there are helping us with the fast turnaround. We don't really have a backlog this year like we've had in the past. Reserves, discards and deletions, interlibrary loan, there is no more OPAC, and so all that has also impacted how we are presenting things to our library instruction. And as you might tell from some of the discussion, the trend that's going on in the library industry, the blurring and blending of the back and front sides of the library organizations, the silos are changing, they're merging, they're breaking down. And I think that's happening in a lot of places, big and small. And as I mentioned, my job is changing. We're able to do more work with tech services and processes. We no longer have one person who has to run a script and send out the reports to everyone. And we have more e-resources administrative work taking place now, and we've been greatly improving our electronic resources management.
Okay, sorry about that. We are going to skip this question box and answer at the end if people are still on board. If you had to do the process again, is there anything you would do differently? Any words of advice?
There is nothing that we did differently, and the verbiage is all there. We had discovery already in place, which was a plus, not always possible. We had already completed a reclamation project, and we had already been working on our ILS data cleanup. So when we chose WMS, we were positioned really nicely, and we also have very, very good staff who are smart. They know what they want to do and what they are doing, and they understand the patron perspective, which is the whole point of this. So words of advice, the data and standards are the rule. We did a 2- or 3-phased approach. We didn't try to do it all in one swoop. If you have to implement discovery with WMS, you can do that, but you can have a second phase of discovery where you go back and fine-tune and refine and tweak it and work on it. You don't have to implement new modules or add-on modules of WMS at the point where you migrate and implement. You can actually focus on the implementation and the migration piece and then come back after you go live and work on the additional features, functions, or add-on modules that are new to you, and you don't really have to try and swallow the whole elephant at one time, but take it in bite-sized pieces. I think that those are the best things that helped us out is having that phased approach, and the advantage of having some, if you have time and can do reclamation, or if you're really serious, put the discovery up first, I would recommend looking into that.
Excellent.